And when I graduated, I got a position in Baltimore, Maryland. It was quite the experience. I wasn't cut out for the city. So then we moved back and I got a position down at Newcastle, but it was only part time. So I taught part time phys ed and then I subbed the rest of the day. It was a great experience. And then a year later, I landed a position at Titusville High School. I taught high school PE for 4 years there. And now I'm in my dream position, which is elementary PE at Valley Grove.
Would you say there's like a big difference teaching physical education between the elementary school level and the high school level?
I think it depends on the person. Some people are definitely cut out for the high school. I liked it for about 3 years and then I was ready to be done after COVID, but I think that's partially why. Like, COVID ruined PE for me at the high school level, if that makes any sense. Sean can probably agree with me. It was really tough. Um,
Um, with being now an elementary school teacher, what was the most unexpected challenge you faced while working with the younger children in your first year? And how would you say you adapted to those types of challenges you were going through?
I think the biggest thing that I struggle with is we don't have much time between classes. Like at the high school, you have a bell schedule, there's time between classes. Right now, I finished second grade at 2:10 and kindergarten walks in at 2:10. That's probably the hardest thing because I have to be all upbeat and crazy and have the gym all ready to go, but it's nearly impossible. That's probably my biggest struggle.
And how would you say you just kind of deal with it? Like, do you take maybe with your breaks like an extra second to breathe on those, or how would you say you would deal with that challenge?
So the biggest thing is having a routine. So they come into the gym, they know they start warming up. And the only way that I can start a warm up, I can't really do an activity because I have to set up for the next class. So I have them start and they jog slash walk around the perimeter of the gym while I get everything set up. That's how I dealt with it because even with administration, like nothing's going to change. It is what it is. I'm everybody else's prep. They appreciate me, but I have to be their prep. So they can't stand at the door for 5 minutes and wait for me, you know?
Mhm. And with that, what are some practical ways new elementary school teachers can build trust and confidence with students within that first couple weeks of school?
Um, I see them once a week. So we try to do a bunch of activities. We test their skills the first couple weeks. And if a kid can't do it, we just move on. Like, you don't want them to not be able to do a basic locomotor skill in front of their friends. So if somebody can't do a jumping jack in fifth grade, that's super embarrassing. So we have to move on, and I'll be like, just do your legs or just do your arms, something like that to keep them positive so they don't just totally shut down.
So, do you find yourself, you kind of gave a situation like, oh, having to switch things for a certain student. Do you find yourself needing to work on the fly like that, like pretty frequently, mostly with younger kids that sometimes get a little crazy and hectic?
Oh, yes. Yes, all the time.
Um, and with that, with like the big emotions of some of the younger kids, because again, they're still young, they're still learning their emotions and everything else along those lines. How do you handle it when a lesson isn't necessarily working and your students become either distracted, restless, or maybe just off task?
Pull out the noodles and play tag. That's the best way to do it. If they're not understanding what's going on, everybody needs a brain break. We're going to play tag and then we'll get back to doing stations.
Now, do you feel you do stations a lot with your students, and would that be all ages, or just maybe for the younger ones to create more of a routine for them?
We do a lot of stations up until about third grade, and then I start exposing them to different sports. Not all sports, but like some sports based activities. We do a lot of small sided games with the older bunch of elementary kids. But yes, there's a lot of stations with the little ones. Lots and lots.
And
Gretchen,
what, yes.
I'm sorry. I'm Dr. Kessel from East Stroudsburg University. I'm monitoring the chat today, and I just wanted to touch base and make sure that all ESU students and Westchester students, please turn your cameras on. You've been requested to do so, and I'll try not to interrupt too much. Thank you, though.
No worries at all. Thank you. Back to the question I was saying, talking about the routines, what strategies help you establish a routine with your students and expectations so your classroom felt very structured? And again, you have the younger kids, so you want it to be structured, but you also want it to be fun and very engaging for this younger group?
Um, I would say I start with them in pre-K and we try to do things very similar and then we build on them as they grow. So we start the class with their warm up, like I said, and then we go straight into some flexibility activities. And then we go to the Oriole, as we call it, the center circle. And that's where I give the instructions for the day. Very brief, never long, always very short. And then we get right to the activity, and then they know as the closure, they have to remember the health topic that I talked about at the Oriole.
Mm. And with working with the younger kids, we all know with younger kids, you need a lot more patience sometimes. How do you stay patient and positive on days when students are especially maybe emotional or maybe very energetic or honestly just challenging on days?
Or if I have a bad day,
Exactly.
you gotta fake it. That's
Mhm.
the best way to do it. You have to put on a brave face, smile, do exactly what you need to do to get through the day. And we struggle. There's a lot of kids that they don't even know if they're going home to have dinner. Like they don't know
Mm,
where they're going to end up for that evening. If I'm their safe haven, I have to be that no matter what, because that's who I am for them.
mm. And do you feel sometimes it's almost the opposite, where maybe you're not having the best day, but the kids are the ones that bring you that good energy, bring you those good vibes and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes you just need a hug from a stinky pre K kid.
Um, Talking about maybe just having those bad days and just kind of stepping into that new role, when did you first feel confident leading a room full of elementary students, especially with their different energy levels and needs?
I would say I probably wouldn't be successful if I wasn't confident from day one.
Hmm.
Got to find it when you're doing your student teaching because it's either you make it or you don't. You got to figure out your classroom management, your teaching philosophy. You have to have it basically figured out before you get started.
Hmm.
Because once,
It's
if you start a year somehow, like if you don't start the year the right way, it's just going to get worse because you don't see them as often. Like high school teachers, they see them once every other day, sometimes every day. At the elementary level, like I only see my kids once a week. So if we fall apart the first day, they're going to be way off task the next week.
so in a sense, it's almost like the love of the game, wanting to be there, wanting to teach the students, loving what you're doing as a living.
Yes. And I very much do.
Talking more about planning with the children, how much of teaching elementary school is planning ahead versus adjusting in the moment based on how your students are responding?
Um, I plan ahead very well. I would say I have it pretty well structured now after 4 years at the elementary school. And I do have to adapt. Like right now, for example, I have a fourth grade class that's still doing third grade activities because they're just not there yet. So you have to plan around which kids are in which group. Like they might be great in the classroom, but once it comes to the gym, their teachers don't understand that they're way behind the other kiddos.
Hmm. And when you're talking about other teachers and that type of stuff, I'm guessing you do work with other health and PE teachers in your school.
There's no other ones at the elementary school. It's just me.
So even when you were in high school, did you by chance work with other
Oh, yes. Yes.
um so how long have you fully been teaching for at that high school level before
High
you got to elementary?
I've been teaching 10 years total, so 6 years at the high school level and 4 years at the elementary.
When working with other health and PE teachers, how did you avoid comparing yourself to veteran teachers, especially when they seem to manage their classroom so effortlessly, where sometimes when you first step into those shoes, it kind of feels like you got a lot on your plate and you don't know how to manage?
I was very blessed and I worked well with everybody that I worked with. I know I have friends that have coworkers that they don't really get along with, but when I was at Titusville, I worked with three of the most solid phys ed teachers in the state, I would say. They're really, well, now they're not all there. One of them became the AD and then the other one has since gone on to do other things, but they were really awesome. I
Mm,
never really had to, I guess you have to listen to what they have to say as veteran teachers, but they also took my input very seriously.
that's good. So in a sense of comparing and being like, oh, why can't I be like that? It was more of a situation where you used what who they are and what they're doing as support, correct?
Exactly.
And as someone that has been teaching for 10 years now, both at each level, if you can give one piece of advice to a first year elementary teacher about connecting with their students, what would that be?
Love them. Don't tell them you love them, but love them. They'll know if you love them or not. Be outside when they get there in the morning. Say good morning. That means the world to them. Show up at sporting events like Little League. Be there. Just be there for them.
Mhm. And last question before we move on to Sean. Can you share a moment when something went wrong in a classroom? It can be big, it can be small, but it turned into a very valuable learning lesson for yourself and something that you would like to share with us and something that has really shaped who you are as a teacher.
Do you want like blood all over the floor or broken arm? What would you like?
Let's be realistic. We're all gonna be PE teachers. We're gonna see some injuries. Not every sport is gonna be the safest. Give us a story or two.
All right. So this happened about 3 months ago. It was right before Christmas. I had a second grader run into another second grader. He doesn't understand personal space at all. You could tell him to look one way, he's going to look the other. That kind of kiddo. He was running a different direction than he should have been, and the other girl was coming at him. And she turned around to talk to her friend as she was running, and they collided. His teeth went into, no, her teeth went into his forehead. And I'm the only person in the gym. So there's two huge gouges here, blood gushing everywhere from there. Her front four teeth that were adult teeth, all are loose. Everything's bleeding in her mouth. So the biggest thing is I had to get the other kids out of the room. So they didn't see all of it. So I yelled at them to go out into the hallway, and I grabbed my walkie talkie and I called for admin, and they didn't hear me the first two times I called on the walkie. So then one of the kids had to run over to the office to get them. But I think the biggest thing is I kept everybody safe. I was holding on to both kids that were bleeding. Um, you have to manage. It was stressful and no one was answering on the walkie-talkie like they should have been. But you get through it.
Handling a very stressful situation on the fly is definitely something every teacher, no matter what subject, is going to have to learn to do because, again, nothing is going to go completely perfect.
Yes.
Is there any last things you would like to share with the audience about your experience? Maybe just any more advice you can give to anyone else who is looking to become someone like you?
Do what you love. Um, Kids will love you no matter what. Even if you screw up, just don't make it look too much like you screw up. That's about it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Liz, for talking to us now. We are going to go on to Sean Bean. Is Sean Bean in this call right now?
Sean, you're muted.
There it is. Sorry,
There he is.
I'm here.
So Sean, can you tell us a little bit about yourself to start off with?
Sure. So this is my 20th year of teaching, and actually started my teaching at an elementary school. And I actually came from Titusville originally. That's where I went to high school, and from there, I just decided I wanted to try to stay in the area if I could, but there was different plans, so I took a position at a K-6 elementary school down in Virginia, and it was in Orange County, Virginia. That was in 2005. So I taught there, became very, very active, very busy, trying to build my resume, doing everything I could to try to come back. And from there, the following year, actually was one of the more challenging type of things to do, which was I got hired and didn't start until October 30th. So from a teacher that was retiring and a teacher that basically let the rules just kind of go. There were no rules at that point in time. So here I am starting, after the school year had already began, and I'm in the process at teaching 7th to 12th grade at this point at the high school. And it was just a matter of trying to make all the changes. So again, I've been at Cranberry since the fall of 2006. Like I said, a little bit of a year at the elementary. So I do have those memories. I can relate to everything that Liz was just talking about, and a lot of those different things. So now being at the high school again, it's something that I look to finish my career at Cranberry. So um, right now, I've been the department coordinator at the school since probably 2011, 12. So been pretty actively involved with coaching at the varsity level, junior high level as well. So pretty integrated with the school in a lot of different ways, and a lot of different community outreach programs and things that we've been involved with, connecting other schools with what we do, and a lot of different things of that nature. So
That's amazing. And you had mentioned that you also coach as well. Do you find that it's almost easier because all your high school students are staying right after school and like those are the kids you're teaching, so that schedule is probably pretty easy because you're staying in the same area?
In some cases, yes. Now, recently, the last few years in particular, I've actually slowly stepped away from coaching, only because my two kids have come up through the varsity, and like I have a 19 and a 14-year-old, so I'm in the process of just being dad, watching them, and which I would recommend anybody if you have kids when you get to that point. You can't get that time back, so that's advice I took from other coaches, and I'm glad I did. But I miss the coaching aspect of it. But yes, when you're coaching those kids at that level, there's a different connection that you have. There's a different rapport that you're able to build. Sometimes they're sharing the same spot. Sometimes they're not sharing the same spot. Depends on what you're coaching. For me, I was coaching softball, I was coaching junior high girls basketball, I was coaching golf, coaching soccer, those type of things. So just depended on the season whether or not we were trying to share some of the same room, and I would see them right afterwards or whatnot. But it was a nice combination between what I did in the classroom and what I did on the field, so to speak. It was there was a nice, I guess, bridge between the two, and it definitely made the classroom better.
So, actually, talking about the classroom, when you first started, what was your biggest challenge when teaching the high school students, especially with classroom management or student motivation? What was like your biggest way to handle the kids, and what would be some advice you'd be able to give to some people about that organization and management in a high school classroom?
So I think when you're talking about managing, um, just managing in the classroom, and Liz even mentioned it. You've got to there has to be some consistency to what you're doing, and that's one of the things that I talk a lot about when you talk about classroom management as a whole. It really comes down to what I would say are like being having three C's, which is being clear, being concise, and being consistent. And I think if you offer those type of things in your instructional duties, your non-instructional duties, what you're going to find is you're going to have a classroom setting where there's kids are going to come in knowing what to expect when you start class. They follow a routine, and it's not a bad routine. It's not a boring routine. It's just a routine of how you do things, which will ultimately set that expectation for you, and allows kids to understand that this is what we do here. This is kind of the culture that we've created, and we want students to be able to do those type of things, whatever that is. And I think the long run on that, what you find is you find students that end up being more motivated because they understand why they're doing what they're doing, and that's part of the process as far as just again sticking to those three C's. You got to be clear, consistent, and concise when you're talking to them, and just with the overall layout. I mean, that in itself makes a big difference in the totality of classroom management, in my opinion.
Now, talking about that organization, having that management, and kind of helping that confidence with your students, when did you first fe ooh, excuse me, when did you first start to feel confident teaching your specific subject, and what helped you connect that content with your students' interest?
I think I probably would say, like, see, I started coaching right out of high school. and I was coaching junior high, and I got into coaching at the varsity level even right out of high school. Just became very involved with that. So communicating to students at that age, at different ages, really was not ever something that really bothered me. It was that portion of it was pretty, I guess, pretty easy for me. But what I would say, as far as being able to see that, like, be able to communicate with the kids, all right, and knowing, like, when you get into a room with them, to try to, I guess, in a sense, be impactful. I think that's the thing where you look at it and say, how do I relate to these kids? How do I get this message across, instead of just coming in, and what I would always say is, like, basically just covering or lecturing the material versus connecting the material. And connecting the material is a really important piece. I mean, you heard Liz mention about talking to them at the end of the class, and asking them their question, if they remembered basically why they were doing what they were doing, and that kind of stuff. And it's really the same design even at the high school, but you can connect that with them when you know the student, and you know the student by understanding, talking to the kid, taking a teachable moment in class, walking up. If you're my student, Gretchen, and I say, I go up and say, hey, Gretchen, saw you were playing softball last night. How'd the game go? And I'm just basically building a rapport, so I understand more about you as an individual, and that in itself allows the student to build this bridge and this rapport, and that that allows me to then manipulate and use my lesson in a way that I can connect it to the students in a way that I think is much better, and a much better learning tool for them.
Now, with being at the high school level, you probably deal with a lot of different students. Do you find it's maybe hard to connect on that certain level with all your students? And how would you deal with the kids maybe you're not as connected to, maybe because they aren't opening up as much? Or basically, like, how do you open up a kid to kind of be more comfortable and have that connection with yourself?
Well, I start that early. Actually, I start that when kids come in seventh grade, the first time I see them. On day one. I let the students know that they will be assessed in my class based on their ability to come into class and meet the expectation. I'm not going to assess them and give them a particular grade just because whether or not they can just shoot a basketball and make X amount of shots, and those type of things. That's not what I'm looking for. And so for me, I want the students to understand that they fit no matter where they're at. And I think that in itself makes a substantial difference, to be able to communicate that early with the students, that, hey, you come in, meet the expectation. You'll know what that expectation is, because I'll make sure that when we go into every unit, I'll be very clear about how you're going to be assessed. I give them multiple ways to be assessed in class. And I think that really is what makes the difference, is being able to just communicate that early on, that no matter where you're at, we're going to start somewhere. And don't worry about where you're at, because you have kids all over the spectrum. You have kids that are exceptional when it comes to the physical piece, and they're the athletes. They're skyrocketing off of that end. And you have kids that don't, and you're thinking, well, how do you communicate? How do you reach those particular kids that maybe you feel like you don't fit in with, or you think that they don't think that you fit in with them? So when it comes specifically to those kids, I absolutely make it a purpose, and I would tell this to everybody who's listening right now, is that you need to make time for that kid. You have no idea the impact that you can have that on that kid by walking up and saying, hey, don't worry about where you're at today. If you're having an off day, give me your best. Let me see what your best is today on wherever you're at. Let's see where you're at, and those type of things. And it's just a little bit of a motivation, and you got to be okay with that as a teacher. You got to understand that kids come in with a bad day, and some kids aren't going to be exceptionally good at one thing, but they're going to be great at something else. So you need to be able to, take your lessons and units and create ways where everybody has an opportunity to feel like they can contribute.
When you talk about your lesson, how would you say like you organize your lessons at this level?
So I organize my lessons. We do a 2 week unit basically. So for us in particular, what I look at is the most I'll end up doing in 2 weeks, because I have kids every other day for basically the entire year. But in a 2 week window, I would see them 5 times total. 4 out of the 5 would be on the unit that we're actually doing. So it doesn't really matter if it was, for example, I think right now we're doing some capture the flag. What I would end up doing is doing some what I call lesson progression. So I start them at the bottom end, in particular, meaning that we start working through some of the things that they need in order to be successful in that activity. We talk about those. I give clues and give hints, but when I lay that out, I look at the final result at the end on that day 4 to find out, like, we started here and then we just worked our way up. And by day 4, they get to the point where once we're done, I left them wanting more. And that's exactly how I try to plan out all my lessons. I don't leave anything out, but maybe it's one of those things where I don't give everything to them on day 1 because I want to work them up, especially at the middle school level when they're still working through some of those different skills and different things that they need to be able to do, communication, teamwork, all the things that they still struggle with. And so, I might start them a little bit slower, on day 1 and 2, but by day 3 and 4, that lesson now is kind of, in a sense, pretty much fully open. Where at the senior high level, I'm going to do some review on day 1 with them, get them started into the activity. Day 2, we're going to work through almost everything, and then day 3 and 4, we're going to open it up wide open for them, and maybe even offer some advanced things that junior high doesn't have options to.
Now, when you're talking about your lesson plans, they seem to be very organized, but how do you adjust when a lesson plan isn't necessarily going as planned, especially when students are either distracted, maybe disengaged, or unwilling to participate, or maybe even just too difficult for some of the kids?
Well, the very first thing that I do is I reflect on myself. I look at that immediately, and if I see that a lesson is not going well, I I don't look at the students and say, well, that kid's not doing this. These guys just aren't paying attention. I immediately stop and say, what could I have done differently to make this lesson successful? Or what am I doing in this lesson that's not working? Was I not clear enough? When I gave the instruction, that could be. And if that's the case, I need to make sure that I make that correction. So if it's something that, as far as making the correction, how do I go about doing that? Well, just like any veteran teacher would do, you do it on the fly. And I can tell you the number of times that I've been in a lesson where I thought, this is a cool lesson. This is really good. This is going to start out really great. And I'm 10 minutes in and I'm standing off to the side watching. I'm going, this is terrible. This is not the way I wanted it to go. And so there's been times where I've literally I've stopped the lesson right in mid flow and said, hey, we're going to change this up right now. This is not working. And some of the students will be like, yeah, I think you're right, Mr. Bean. Like, can we change this or that? Yep, guys, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to flip this around and whatever it is that you have to do, and you just make the changes. But, you make the changes and you become better at it on the fly, that you can manipulate your lesson, do the review in your head, do the reflection, make the changes, and do it without any real transitional problems.
So it sounds like you have your class very under control. Um, But what advice would you give to a new secondary teacher who feels like they have lost control of a class and or are struggling with a consistent behavior issue? Because obviously, when you get to the older kids, some kids are going to be more, oh, I don't want to do this, or just kind of a pain in the butt to kind of get them to listen to you. So what advice would you give in a situation like that?
I'd give a couple pieces of advice. Number one, stop reacting to things and start being proactive to the lesson. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you know that you're, for example, a fourth period class, if you know your fourth period class is going to come in and they're just a little bit more wild than the rest of the class, and this unit that you're teaching just happens to have some basketballs or has some balls out or whatever the case is, guess what? Before they come in, I'm putting that stuff away. I'm not going to leave it out there. It's an attractive nuisance. And what'll take place is you will have students that'll come in and do things, and they're going to be off task immediately. So for me, I'm setting a proactive approach to say, I know the class that's coming in. I know the student. I know the chemistry that this class has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save myself the hassle. I'm going to take away those type of things temporarily. And when they come in, I'm going to tell this class, here are the expectations. I need you to be clear. And I want you to repeat this back to me. Everybody understand exactly what I need, because here's what's going to take place. If we can't follow through with those, if we're not listening, if we're not applying ourselves, then these rules are going to change. and I don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. So let's make sure that it doesn't happen. And from there, we get things started. A simple example to this would be we played pickleball just a couple weeks ago. Now, when we play pickleball, I allow the students, after I give instruction, to take the paddles. They get their paddles and they get themselves their team. I don't let them go into the and grab the pickleballs out of the box, because every student will grab a pickleball, and I have 6 courts. And if I have 25 kids in a class, I have 25 balls out there, and I only need 6. So I got balls flying everywhere. Pickleballs just going everywhere, right? If I let them do that. So I don't do that. I have them go to a court. That's being a proactive approach. I have them go to a court with their team. Once I see that they have a court filled up, I will get a ball to them. So I'm preventing the chaos from starting because of the way that I try to present that. Now, just to be clear for all the new teachers out there or people that are just starting out, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that you can stop impulse decisions. There are students that will just do impulse type of things, and you will sometimes just go, I don't understand. I don't understand how that happened. And you have to have that conversation. And at that point, you would call that student over and say, you know, I don't, knowing my expectation, what justified you to do what you did? And they can't justify it because they know what the expectation is. But what they get to realize, they start to realize is the impulse decision that they made caused them to have a conversation with me. So you have to be able to see that. So don't assume for a second that I'm saying that no impulse decisions ever happen in my class, because that's not the case. It's how do you deal with an impulse, but consistency across the board. If you're proactive on how you're approaching those behavior type of things when they're rowdy or whatever, you have to set a clear expectation immediately and in advance, so you take those things away from them.
So obviously, again, it sounds like your classroom is very organized. It sounds like you're the big man of your gym. So with that, you probably have a lot of confidence to be able to handle your classroom like that. And I bet you a lot of that confidence does come from experience. But how much of your confidence comes from strong content knowledge versus actual classroom experiences and relationship building you have with your students?
I got to be honest with you, that you just said that a lot of ways that are very very equal in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, do I feel confident in the material that I'm teaching? I mean, I'm 20 years in, and I'm a student myself, and I enjoy learning, and I read on the materials, and I try to stay, up on the things that are important. I network with other professionals, those type of things. So for me, yeah, I feel like I do know the content. And sometimes if you don't feel like you know the content, you need to invest your time into that so that you can have a conversation. And it is actually okay to tell the student, who, if you're talking to a student about weight training in particular, and they say, Mr. Bean, I have a question about this or that. Can you talk to me about, for example, like, can you talk to me about creatine? Is that worth my time? Is that safe? Is that, what can you tell me about this, or how should I weight train for that? If you don't have an answer to that, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not really sure, but let me get back to you on it, and I'll check in and I'll get back to you. And that's when you have to do that. You have to follow through. You got to follow through to make sure that that is actually taking place. And the rest of the stuff, as far as just having the confidence to that kind of stuff, like, you know, to me, I've always been a lot more what I would classify as street smart than book smart. And when I say street smart, I mean the ability to just read people. I try to pay close attention when a student walks through my doors at the beginning of class to kind of read where they're at. Are they having a down day? Are they having a rough day? Did it look like they just flunked their chemistry test? I don't know. But these are things that I pay close attention to. And so for me to be able to communicate to a student initially with that those are things that, again, to me, really allow me the ability to do what I do. I think Liz said this too. Like, I just feel like this is, for me, middle school, high school is where I'm supposed to be, and I don't think it's a matter of, where I can't recall back when I didn't feel like I was confident in the room, and I think that's just because I'm an outgoing person, and so for me, I I enjoy the teaching. I enjoy making impacts where I can. Hopefully, they're positive. So, I look for that as an opportunity to be able to do that.
That's amazing in a sense of when you're building that connection with your students, you're able to bring that knowledge to the table, and it seems like you're almost always learning. And I think that's something very important for teachers to consistently be learning, because you're not just teaching your students, you're also learning from your students. And I think it is a very like back and forth way of learning and just growing as an individual, growing as a teacher, and helping your students grow as well. Last question I have for you tonight. Can you share a moment where a lesson, class period, or interaction didn't go well, but ultimately helped you grow as a secondary teacher?
I'm going to give you two quick ones.
Okay.
Two quick ones. One, I had a student once in my career that the student was, to no fault of his own, was he had seizures, and seizures were something that were very common. And it just so happened this year I had him every single day. He had a double, what's called a double PE class, so I had him every year, all a whole year, and it was on a regular basis. I mean, he was to the point where he was having seizures probably 2 and 3 times a week in my class. And so when you have that, it's a process where obviously you have to adapt and you have to do it quickly. So from a difficult standpoint, what did I learn from those type of things is, one, how to be flexible, how to be calm, just how to be in that moment, and how can you deal and take care of one student without him feeling embarrassed and still managing the rest of the class at the same time. There are protocols that I set up in order to be able to do those type of things. And so I learned a lot about myself just on how to be flexible and adaptable in those particular moments. And what I was able to learn about myself was, when things get really kind of crazy, I have a tendency to slow down and slow the process down a little bit, and that's just something that I've learned over the course of my career. So that's one. The second one was that, you know what, you can never count a kid out, ever. I don't care what potential, where they're at on the spectrum. I don't care if they're anything. It doesn't matter to me. I really don't care. Uh, I don't like when somebody starts putting limits on students of what they can and cannot do. I had a student that came into my class. I had him in seventh grade all the way through as a senior, and the student he was a high functioning autism student, but coming into class, he had a lot of trust issues, because what had taken place was, in short, was that he was always put with limits at home. In his home life, there were limits. You can't do that. You can't do that. That's not something that you can do. And we actually did some rollerblading, and so this young boy was terrified of the idea of putting rollerblades on. I adapted. I taught the class. I got the class going, and I worked directly with this kid while I was observing the rest of them. And from day one to day four, I started with this kid sitting on a chair, just getting the rollerblades on his feet and having him move his feet back and forth on a chair. And I got him to from there to stand up where we were holding onto his arm, me and his teacher's aide. Day three, I got him to be able to get over to the wall on a mat so that he didn't really roll, and he was able to hold the wall and kind of walk with the rollerblades. Day four, the young man looked at me and said, "No," he said, "Mr. Bean, I want to get up on that over there by that wall. I don't want any help. I think I can do it today." And he built the confidence to be able to say, "I can do it." And I was actually able to see it. I took a recording of him. I asked him if I could record. I recorded about a 10-second clip of him out in the middle of the gym, rollerblading with no help whatsoever, coming towards me. And I showed it to his mom and his grandma in an IEP meeting that they had, and they both broke down and started to cry because they were so amazed. They never thought that something that was ever possible, and it was cool for me to be able to share with the parent that in a professional manner, without telling them how to parent, like, we don't put limits on your kid, because look how much he just exceeded those limits. And so that was a really cool moment, and it was a nice reflection for me too, like, to make sure that I don't look at a kid for any particular reason and say, well, that kid probably can't do that. I don't want to ever say that, so I don't say that. And that was just a nice reflection to that.
Those are both very impactful stories, and it just shows how much a teacher can do to help support other people and how they can best teach anyone at any different level. I do have a bonus question for both Sean and Liz. This is just kind of a fun one. If you guys could get into a time machine and go back to yourself the first day you started teaching, that very first time you stepped into the classroom, Sean, I know you were elementary, Liz, you were high school. What advice would you tell yourself, staring yourself in the face, about what you're either going to get into, advice, or anything else along those lines you'd want to tell your younger self?
Liz, you want to go first, or you want me to go, or does it
Go
matter?
ahead.
All right. So, um, there's probably a lot of different things, but I think probably what I would say, because as Liz mentioned as well, the whole COVID process, there might be a lot of people in here that didn't have any access to that or weren't around at that point. Or I'm sure they were in high school or whatnot, if nothing else. But the reality of that as a teacher was very, very challenging. So, and there's other times in your career where things you're going to run into roadblocks and those type of things. So, my advice probably that I would say to myself, uh, looking back, I would tell myself something that I would tell everybody here, and that is, you know what? When you're feeling down and out, uh, you need to make sure that you go to the well that keeps you full. And understanding what I'm saying by that is by going to the well that keeps you full, it's the why do you teach? And understanding that. So when you're feeling down and out, don't quit. Go to that well. You're teaching why? Because yes, I teach health and physical education, sure. Okay. But I teach students. And that's actually really my focus. And I need to be impactful to them. So for me, that's the well that keeps me full. I know that sounds like the right answer, like, oh, that's a rehearsed answer. It is not a rehearsed answer. That is what keeps you driving. I'm telling you, Liz, you can attest to this. If it comes down to you as a teacher saying, I want to be a teacher because I want to be out at 3 o'clock, or I want to be home on the weekends, or I can't wait for summer. I'm here to tell you, after 20 years, it will burn you out because you're going to constantly be looking to those, and those will not fill you up. What will fill you up is seeing the impact that you have on a student when they grow up. I'm fortunate enough in most cases to see kids from 7th to 12th grade, and I get to watch them change all the way from being these little kind of screwy, socially awkward 7th grade kids to seniors when they feel like they're ready to go out and take on the world. And from my understanding of that, it's a great honor to know that I was part of that story. I was part of their dash in their life. And I look to that because that's what makes the difference. When I realize it, when I'm down, I'm like, you know what? You make a difference. You might not always see it, but you make a difference, and you do because you're trying to make a difference. And that's all we can ask from us as teachers.
I agree with Sean 110%. You've got to build the relationships. The kids are going to come back. But I would probably tell myself that you can do it, even though it's going to be really hard. Not only was COVID awful, but I was also very, very pregnant when COVID happened. So I was
Jeez.
trying on my computer to teach PE over a camera while I'm 8 months pregnant. It was awful. But I learned,
You win.
huh?
Sorry, I said you win, Liz.
It was terrible. That's why I was like, I can't do this high school thing again. If it comes down to me having to teach on the computer again, I'm going to die. I can't do it. Technology's awful. I considered switching to like nursing or something. I was like, this is terrible. But I remembered, and as soon as I got my elementary position, I was like, this is why I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so worth it. The kids seeing you at the grocery store, like we talked about when we first started talking. Like, if a kid
Yep.
sees you at the grocery store and like comes up and grabs your legs, and their parents look at you like you're some crazy person because they have no idea who you are, you're like, I'm just the phys ed teacher. But yes, it's all worth it.
As we start to wrap up our discussion, I just want to thank both of you guys so much for sharing your stories, experience, insight, and overall just advice. I think we heard some really valuable perspectives on building confidence, managing challenges, and growing as educators, whether you're working with elementary or secondary students. At this point, we're going to open it up for questions. If you have anything you'd like to ask, feel free to put it in chat and or raise your hand.
Gretchen, I wanted to say one last tiny thing,
Oh,
and that
yes.
is just for anybody anybody who's out there that and might actually be interested. I have some material here that I put into some bullet form for you all, and I'm 100% willing. If you're interested and you want to reach out to me, you feel free to email me. I will 100% send this over to you. They're just general tips for new teachers. That there's 8 of them here. Good classroom management type of techniques, where I talk about being clear, concise, consistent. Also, when it's with the discipline, the proactive approach, and then finally about how to connect your lesson versus lecturing your lesson. So if you're interested in any of those, by all means, reach out. I'll get it to you as for sure within the day.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, Gretchen. I'd like to just chime in and say thank you to all of you FPAC representatives for putting on such a great webinar today. Before we head into a Q&A session, I would like to remind you of a couple things. One, Dr. Jim Barry just shared in the chat to stick around at the end to get your certificate of participation tonight. And I would also like to hand it over to Linda to share some important information about Shape PA. So think about some questions that you have here as we chime in and share some important information with you. Are you able to, yeah, take it away, Linda.
All right, thanks, Danielle. What a wonderful webinar this evening. Such great tips for teaching in the trenches for all of you future educators and early educators. It was nice. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'd like to just share my screen here for a moment. And I typically do a little slide presentation and talk about Shape PA. I am the current president of Shape PA. I refer to myself as Lifelong Learning Linda. And it's so nice to see such great youthful faces entering the profession. And once again, I want to thank Sean and Elizabeth for sharing their expertise and their experiences. Really, some of the best learning comes from others. And Sean and Elizabeth, you definitely did that. So let me talk a little bit about Shape PA. If you're not a member, I'll talk about member benefits. We are a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization, and our mission is to provide leadership, advocacy, and obviously professional development like tonight to health and physical educators across Pennsylvania. And our vision is overall wellness in Pennsylvania. And being a member has its perks. Oops, sorry about that. Certainly has its perks. Obviously, professional development and professional growth. Advocacy tools. We're all in a profession that is sometimes questioned. I heard, I think Elizabeth saying that something about teachers coming to class, and I forget how you referenced that.
I'm other teachers prep.
Yes, your other teachers prep. And so we all have to advocate, and we have to know where we can advocate. We have a great advocacy committee that is enthralled and engaged in many ways to advocate across the state. So that's another member benefit. We also award across the state for Teachers of the Year. We have high performing professional honor award and other awards named after people of the past. And they're recognized once a year at the conference. And I'll speak to that in a little bit. It helps to reignite your passion. Here I am as president. I'm 64, and I've been a member of Shape PA for over 45 years. When I went into college or sinus, I was encouraged to get involved, and I haven't let go since then. So that's another benefit. The Professional Learning Network, I've built friendships. There's also another benefit is there's a journal, there's a newsletter, there's member-only resources on our website. Part of this is a strong reason for people to be members of Shape PA. If you aren't a member and you wish to be, you can scan to join up there in the corner. You can also go on the website to join and learn more about our wonderful organization. Being the president this year, we have a theme, and the theme is "We are the heartbeat of education." And I heard that a lot from Sean and Elizabeth tonight, that we definitely are the heartbeat. And the mantra for this year is to merge the past with the present to influence the future. So here we have some teachers that are veterans, and they are offering to influence the future. So we're following through on that mantra as well. I'd ask that you mark your calendars for November 12th and 13th. That's when we will host the 2026 Shape PA, We Are the Heartbeat of Education, at Spooky Nook Sports Complex. Once again this year, and that was 2024 was also at Spooky Nooks. I'll skip right over that. We have some upcoming webinars that are going to be valuable. This one is April 21st at 7 p.m. From Classrooms to the Capitol, Advocacy Across Pennsylvania. And we have some stellar presenters that evening, Dave Schmidt and Liz Potash. And so I welcome you to go on and register for that webinar. And then on April 27th, From Planning to Play, Creating Professional Development that Reflects the Heartbeat of Education. That's coming soon. There'll be a flyer made and shared with everyone. I'm really sincerely grateful to be the president of this great organization. And I hope all of you, whether you're a member or a member to be, there's always opportunities for you to get involved. I was always a behind the scenes kind of person, but now in the limelight as it relates to the position. But it's a wonderful organization to be involved, and being a member to start is where you start, and then attend the conference this fall, and you will be connected. I guarantee it. So thank you, Danielle, and everyone as part of this webinar. I really appreciate the fact that we have this professional development opportunity for everyone. So thank you. And Gretchen, great job facilitating.
Thank you so much. I just want to say one last thing. A huge thank you again to Elizabeth Sanner and Sean Bean for taking the time to be here and share your experiences with us. Your insights are incredibly valuable, and we truly appreciate your willingness to support future educators. I really hope everyone is leaving tonight feeling more confident, encouraged, and inspired as you continue your journey into education. Thank you guys once again for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great evening.
Before you go, for certificates,